Okay. One of the things people want to know is how did you and Grandpa meet?
Well, he was in the CC camp, and he was stationed over in Woodville, and he got transferred to Kirbyville, and he was Barclay's first cousin. So every weekend, Barclay'd go get him and bring him into town.
You already knew Barclay?
Oh, I was raised with him.
Were you?
We lived side by side when we were kids, and next door to each other. And but he was in and out there for a long time before I ever decided to date him. And for some reason or other, I don't know why, but then we started dating. And the only person I could go anywhere with was Barclay, because Daddy thought his mother was so grand.
And so he was safe to hang out
He
with.
was safe to hang. That's the only car I could get in. But then later on, while he was there in the CC camp, he drove a truck, and they'd have dances out there at the CC camp, and he'd come pick up.
Well, what was the CC camp?
It was the Civilian Conservation Corps. They were doing fire lanes and things. It was a WPA job in the Depression, and he made $30 a month, and he sent $25 home to his parents because they were very, very bad off. And so he only had like $5 a month.
What, was he like 18 then?
He was 19 or something, I think, 18 or 19. And Aunt Alice, Barclay's mother, and his grandmother ran a cafe in Kirbyville. So he'd come in on Friday evening and stay there at Aunt Alice's, and that's how I met him. And I saw him, quite a bit, and then all of a sudden we decided.
How old were you when you got married?
16.
16.
16, can you believe that? Oh, Lordy.
And then you probably started having kids 17.
Yeah. Well, I got pregnant when I was 17, but I lost that one. And then
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And then I had pneumonia. And back in those days, they didn't have anything much for it.
Yeah.
So it was one of those years when everybody had the flu.
So y'all got married in what year?
1935.
So was that still the Depression?
It was still pretty bad. Well, he got out of the CC camp before we got married and went to work there at Call. And but at Call, after he got out of the CC camp, they made $1.92 a day. And they worked 4 days a week most of the time. Sometimes he'd get 5 days, and that's what we lived on.
So when y'all got married, did you have your own place, or did y'all live with somebody's parents?
Well, we lived for a while with Mother and Daddy until there was an empty house that they were had to do some work on that we got at one of the Kirby houses.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just a short time that we stayed there, and then we got our own place, and you paid $1 a room. We owed our soul.
Per room? To the company store, you told me that. Because everything you bought, you kind of signed for it, right?
Yeah, signed for it. And
by the time you got paid, it was all owed to the store.
No money. We had $1 a room for the house. That's how much you paid, and then it was $1 a month for your doctor and your medicine.
Wow.
So
well, somebody on the website was talking about you cooking on a wood-burning stove. Was that while you were married, or was that when you were little?
That's when I was married.
Was it?
The first stove we had was a kerosene one, and that was stinky, and
Imagine.
I got pregnant and I couldn't even cook. And
couldn't stand the smell.
We got a wood stove, and then I couldn't keep a fire going because I wasn't used to.
That'd be hard to cook. I mean, how do you know what temperature? If you're making a cake, how do you know?
I don't know, but Mom and them could make the best cakes and all, and they knew, if they wanted it extra hot, how much wood to put in there, and if they needed it slower, well, they didn't put quite as much.
So where'd you get the wood? I mean, Papa have to go cut it, or what?
They paid you paid 50 cents for a load of wood to burn in the stove it was the leftovers from the mill,
Oh, okay.
And it wasn't cut up. It was cut up into just big
Just
old
like their little
blocks.
leftover pieces.
And then you had to cut it, chop it yourself, and but
Well, when did you get your first electric stove or gas stove? I guess it would have been gas, huh?
I got a gasoline stove
A real gasoline stove.
while we lived in Call, and then when we moved to Houston, I had natural gas there. So that's the years from the time we married, 35 until 42.
Wow.
We most of the time it was a wood stove, and that's what our heat was too, wood stove.
It's like that would still smell, but I guess not like the kerosene.
With the wood, you smell
Like
the
a
wood.
campfire kind of thing.
Yeah, and we always had we had a little old, we called it a tin heater, and you could put those pine knots in there, which everybody could go out somewhere and find those old pine knots, and they'd catch on fire and they'd burn like crazy. And sometimes that little old heater would dance and get to shreds. We did have a little fire there one time, but nothing.
How do you keep kids from getting around it? Just
I guess they
learned once, huh?
They had to learn. That's just all there was to it.
Well, I know you told me before that you used to have the old ice box. I mean, the real, where you had to get like a block of ice.
A block of ice, and Uncle George was the ice man. He had a wagon with the little mules on it, and he was a delivery boy there. And he'd bring the ice around.
How long would it last? I mean, if you got a block of ice, was
Well,
it once a
usually
week or?
about every other day, because it was depending the size of your ice box, and you use that ice very sparingly for drinks or anything like that, And we, you could put water in the ice box, but we had an artesian well, and the water was always pretty cold, so we just drank out of the faucet, and it was, and we were much better off in a way because, we had a garden, we had chickens, and Granddaddy and them had big gardens, and we ate vegetables, whatever.
So y'all have to go wring the chicken's neck and.
Harold
Did you
done
ever do that?
Papa done that sometimes. I never could.
There's no way I could either.
Grandma Fowler could, I'll tell you.
Yes, you could.
She wasn't big as a minute, but boy, she could raise that. I mean, she could.
You wring it quick, huh?
Yeah. Byron was telling a tale last night about there was a big old rooster that was chasing him going out to the outhouse, and he kind of clawed up Byron pretty good, and Grandma Fowler went out there and cornered that rooster and got him to wrung his neck.
They have him for dinner.
Next day, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Well, it's just different. It's a whole different world.
Well, let's see. They want to know about when you were little. Like, I don't know anything about your grandparents. Were you close to your grandparents?
I was very close to my mother's family. My daddy's mother, she was a spoiled brat.
Oh, I've heard about that. Yeah.
When I was born in Galveston, and Daddy was down there working during the shipyards during World War One, and so the war was over in November, but I guess Dad stayed down there and worked till after I was born, and then they moved back to a little town called White City. And my grandmother lived there, aunts and uncles and everything.
Never heard of that.
But it was just a little, it was a little lumber town, and what they did back in those days, they pulled that lumber by mule team. And so they'd put up a little mill, and that little town would grow up, and then they'd have to move the town. And the first memories I really have is of just little bits and pieces, I remember my Aunt Jax and her kids had come in on the train, and we'd go meet the train, and then George and I'd run home and hold the gate. That was our grandmother. And Gene one time tried to climb over the fence in his patent leather shoes, and he fell over the fence and onto. They had a picket fence, and he fell over it and caught on a rain barrel on the other side of the fence, and so we got in some trouble.
So how did you survive without video games and computers and
We
Facebook?
played like
and
we had a good time. We played like
probably stayed outside till dark.
yeah, you did. You stayed outside, and we could play like a broken piece of dish was our dish, and we cooked mud pies and all kind. We had tents. We played putting on shows and everything like that. And at the time that Barclay lived next door to us, we had a garage and they had a garage, and we'd get on our side, and he'd get him and some of his friends get on the other side, and we'd have Chinaberry wars. And we had these tents we made out of tow sacks, and we put on. It'd be all the whole neighborhood kids. We'd put on plays. We played kick the can, and kick the roll the hook, and that kind of thing.
Did you have a bunch of chores? Did y'all have to do like? Did you have to get up and milk cows or stuff like that?
Never had that to do. We all had on Saturdays from the early days. We had to get up and help clean the house, and the boys had to work in the yard. They were not allowed to. They didn't have to do any housework, but mine and Aunt Pat's jobs was to clean our bedroom and the living room.
Did you and Aunt Pat get along when y'all were growing up, or were y'all like typical sisters fighting?
I think we got along pretty good, except in the fact that she'd get up and Mama sewed all the time, so all she'd ever get done was rewinded Mama's thread and stuff in the sewing machine. and I was in a hurry to get through because I knew that I had to get through so I could do something in the afternoons. So I'd clean our room and mop and everything, and she'd be in there winding the thread back up.
She's doing the easy job, huh?
And she would fold. We didn't have much clothes, very many, but we had just a little ship robe that had shelves in it and a small area to hang our clothes. And she'd go in there and refold the clothes and play with all of that, because Mama sewed for us and for neighbors and friends, and there was always,
And was it really clothes made from potato sacks sometimes?
From feed sacks.
Feed sacks.
Oh yes, my girls, Mary wore feed sack dresses.
Yeah. They had patterns and stuff?
Yeah.
Did they?
They wore the big hook skirts when they were in high school. Everybody, even the rain straws and all had. You took 4 yards. Or you'd have to sometimes swap your sacks. You might not get. Grandma and them was getting sacks for they had hogs and cow and chickens, and they'd get a pattern to try to match patterns. Yeah. But when you could get 3 or 4 alike, well then you just sew those together and you put a band on them.
I'd like to see one. That'd be neat. I guess you probably got a picture somewhere of somebody wearing one.
I'm sure there is, because I married Sandra, both wore them.
Yeah.
And that was when they had the net skirts on them. They stood way out. But even like I said, the rain straws and the big wigs around here wore.
They still had them.
Yeah.
Well, out of
make shirts out of the kind that
since
boys.
You had such a big family, what was the hardest thing when they were little? Was it feeding them, clothing them, keeping them all in line? What was the hardest part of all of it?
The hardest part of it was keeping them in shoes.
I can see that. Yeah, because they grow so fast.
And one to wear out shoes faster than the others. And the thing was that I never could buy, one person a shirt without buying 2. Or I couldn't buy a dress without buying 2 or 3. And I made clothes for the 3 older girls, but I didn't do much sewing for Kathy and Charlotte because I had all the other little ones.
Yeah.
And I never did like to sew. But I sewed for the girls, and Harold's mother sewed for us, and my mother died when Charles was 6 months old, and Harold's mother sewed for me and Linda until she died, and And then after I just kind of had to start doing some sewing. And
Let me make sure this thing's still working. Yep, it's still working. We're doing good. So when did you decide to go to work, like Humpty Dumpty?
I was getting. I knew we needed some extra money, real bad, and I'd gone to different places. I think I was trying to talk myself out of a job, but I knew Lola through Steve took tutoring. She taught Steve in the 2nd grade, and then she quit at midterm because she was having twins, and then she was tutoring, and that's where I met her. And then I saw this little place, this Humpty Dumpty, coming up, and one day I just decided to walk down there, and not knowing that she didn't stay down there all the time, but they were registering for the fall semester. So they were going to register the next day. They were getting the rooms ready, and she told me, said, we don't have anything now, but would you be willing to work extra when we need somebody? And I said, yeah. The next night at 9 o'clock she called, can you be there tomorrow? And after that I worked I first started out working from 2 to 5:30, but then I worked full time there, and then I run the thing for the last several years.
How long altogether did you work there?
From 68 to, I think it was early 82, 81, 82, because Kathy and another girl was going to run it 1 year, and the other girl backed out. And that's the year that I had to quit, because Daddy kept coming down to there, and he'd come sit in the office thinking it was time for me to go home. So I realized I had to quit and stay at home. But I did get to work till I was 62 and could draw my Social Security.
Yeah. I know, I went to Humpty Dumpty, so.
Yeah, we had a bunch of you went to Humpty Dumpty.
And didn't Beth teach there too?
Yeah, Beth taught there.
I don't know how you did all day long with kids here, and then I just can't imagine going to work with more kids.
Well, it was, when I went to work down there was over 150 kids. We had 3 classes of kids. Well, there wasn't any public kindergarten here then. So we had 3 classes of kindergarten, 1 class of first graders, because they could go to school.
Either private or public school.
They could go to private school, and if they were, whatever age it was, 6 or 7 by the December, they could take a test at public school and go on into the next grade. And then they stopped that, so they had to be a certain age, no matter how much school you had. And so little by little they cut out that, but then we had 3 4-year-old classes and 1 3-year-old class, and then the daycare.
I remember you washing my mouth out with soap at Humpty Dumpty. You probably had to do that a lot to a bunch of kids.
Well, I said, I look back now and I said I'd be, what would you call it now? I'd be picked up for.
Oh yeah, like abuse or something.
Yeah. I used to play with the kids and tell them I was going to tape their mouths shut. And once or twice I would.
Now you'd probably be turned in. Yeah.
Oh yes, I can't imagine.
You'd be on the national news.
But when I went to work down there, the first day I went to work was horrible because I did not know 50 kids in there.
Yeah, you don't know their names.
Didn't know whose diaper bags was who, and they were registered. And the girl that was with me, that was supposed to stay with me, she just was her last day, and she just walked out. She had her kid in kindergarten, and she was kind of upset with them. Instead of staying through the evening, that was her last day. So I was left in there with 50 kids, and the ones that were worst was the teachers' kids.
Yeah, I could see that.
But we could turn the light off, and every one of them would get quiet. When I left there, would nothing shut them up. That was the difference. Nothing would shut them up. So it was just, I really enjoyed my time there. Of course, I did a whole lot that I didn't get paid for, but that's
And then it's like you come home every evening. Well, not every evening, but you and Papa would go to Legion Hall.
Well, when he was off or something, and we'd go down for a little while, or I'd come home and cook supper. And the kids, though, once I was working like that, if I hadn't cooked something in the morning and left it for them, they'd eat
Go pick up
snacks.
something.
No, they didn't have money to pick up anything. They would snack,
Uh-huh.
and then they didn't want their supper. But that was mostly like when they worked 3 to 11, when Daddy was on 3 to 11, because I cooked supper when he was off, or whenever he was working.
Did he always do shift work? I mean, for a long time, it was always shift.
Yeah, most of his time at outside of the short time he stayed in the labor gang, he shifted, and
I wonder how he slept. He had to sleep days then. If he worked nights sometimes.
he worked. He worked.
Like a graveyard.
Yeah, he worked 3 to 11, and 11 to 7, or 11 to 7, or 7 to 3.
How'd you keep all the kids quiet so he could sleep, or did you?
No, Gene said one time he wished that he had a recorder that he could put on that front door so I could tell him that please don't slam the door.
Yeah.
I tell him don't slam that door. And I think a lot of times now, we have that now. I could have it put on the door.
You could.
It
They probably wouldn't have listened, but you could have did it.
But when they knew they couldn't rip and romp through the house, but most of the time he didn't sleep. He'd go to bed in the morning and he'd get up around noon or something and stay up till about 3, and then he'd go back to bed.
Mm-hmm.
But let some strange person come in here, especially Miss Poussin, and her husband worked shift work too, and her little boy, the youngest one, wore high top shoes, and
It's noisy.
and I had wood floors. When she walked in this house, you just figure he's going to get up and be
Growl.
awake and growl, yeah. But
But how did you do it without any air conditioning? I can't imagine living here
we had
without air conditioning.
this big old ceiling fan, not a ceiling,
The attic fan. I remember
attic
the
fan. Yeah, we had a big old attic fan up there, and then we just had fans, and we finally bought a window unit for him just for him sleeping mostly, but then after I went to work and I was working in air conditioning, I couldn't stand it, so in 73 we had central heat and air put in.
Okay, I have one question that I think Maggie wanted to know. Since you went through Pearl Harbor and 9/11, which one to you was more like traumatic?
Pearl Harbor was, because it was such a huge thing and it was so scary, and I was younger, and I'm not saying that 9/11 didn't tear me up, but that Pearl Harbor was.
I could see all the bombs
And the thing was that you just had radio, and that was you was getting what you was getting from.
It's not like today would be all over the internet. And
Yeah,
everything.
every little thing would be said, and you were just having, and you just had. It literally scared me to death.
Well, did you get involved in any of the war stuff? I mean, like, how the women did was it the Rivet Girls or whatever they were?
Yeah, people that rode bandages and all of this kind. No, I didn't. We moved. The war started December the 7th in 1941, and Uncle Allen came, got Harold, in I think it was February. So it was a couple of months after, and took him to Houston and he went to work in the White's Midland Boiler Works learning to weld. And then I stayed there at home for about a month till we could get a place to live. You could get a couple of paydays and I could get a place to live. And then I had to ride the bus from, Daddy rode with me to Beaumont. And I sit there from like 10 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock in the evening. They would not let me on the bus with these 3 kids because they had soldiers on the bus. They were loaded down. And finally Daddy told them that he said, this woman's moving. She's got to get there. I'd never been any far much away from home. And they finally let me on the bus, and the bus driver said, well, she better keep the kids quiet because the
Which
boys.
three? That was Charles, Sandra, and Byron?
It was Byron and Charles and Byron and Linda. And Linda was, she was born in August, so she was just a baby. So he put me right behind him, and of course the kids were tired. They went to sleep. He tried to talk to me, and I wouldn't talk to him. That was a long. And then I was so late, and I was trying to get a hold of my aunt to tell her I was running late. And it was raining, and I didn't know whether Daddy was going to be there. We didn't get into Houston until about 9 o'clock that night.
Goodness.
I didn't know whether he was going to be there when I got there or what.
Was he there?
Yes, he was there.
Good thing.
And he bought a little 4-room house for $1,700. Didn't even have indoor plumbing, but it was it did have indoor water and all of that.
Well, you have the outhouse or something?
Yeah.
Huh. So that I was wondering how you ended up in Houston, because I know Mama was born in Houston. So was Sandra born in Houston?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they were both born in Houston. She was born at the hospital in the Heights. I think it was, I don't remember what.
It's Herman, wasn't it?
It was in the Heights that you were born, but I can't think. I think it was called the Heights or something. And then Sandra was born at Baptist Hospital in downtown Houston. But then when Mary tried to get her records, they couldn't find any.
I remember that when you were going to go to Scotland and you
Yeah.
needed your records. Well, Aunt Linda on the website, I don't know if she's joking or serious, but I'm going to ask you the question anyway. She wanted to know, what did you think when she was born and you saw that she had the, 2 head things? She wants to know what your reaction was and how you handled it.
Well, it was very, very scary. And I had this aunt that was so country and so down to... and after she was born, they took her to the kitchen, and I heard they had a hollering, oh my God, oh my God. And so I felt like that.
You didn't know what to expect.
I had no idea. Well, I knew that something was wrong. And then they brought her in there. Well, the next day, I couldn't go to Houston, to Beaumont, but Barclay's daddy and Barclay's sister and his mother, Aunt Alice and her daughter, brought her down to Houston, to Beaumont. And the doctor looked at her and said that they thought it was just a benign tumor.
How big was it? Was it
It
almost
was
the size
almost as
of
big
a
as
head?
her neck, yeah. And it was, well, they offered us a picture, but Papa wouldn't have it.
Yeah.
But I'd give anything, and it was written up in the medical journals of that year. They had 40 some odd students out of Galveston watching the surgery. But they sent her back home and said when I got able to come down and be with her,
Then they would do the surgery.
they'd do the surgery. So she was born in August, and I think she had the surgery. She was born August 11th, and I think she had the surgery the first part of September. And
She didn't have any problems with the surgery? It all went good?
it all went good, and I think this doctor's name was Weir, Stuart Weir. And Daddy always said that if he used to say something like, well, Dr. Weir, if I had to have my head cut off and sewed back on, I'd trust him, And so he did the surgery, but they had all these medical students there
Observing it.
and observing. And when they got through with the surgery, they were going to put a needle in her stomach with these tubes, and I had never seen that before. And everyone left me. Everybody left me. Harold's mother and his sisters and aunts and uncles and things were there. And Daddy hadn't got down there yet. So Uncle Robert was there, and he's the only one that
Was there for you then, huh?
was there for me. And that was
That would have been scary.
it was scary, and we were at Hotel Dieu, which is not there anymore, but they I had a hard time with with Harold's mother was taking the diapers to her sister that lived there in Beaumont, and they were washing them and bringing them back, and then she went back to Kuntz, and some of the others were supposed to help me with them, and finally I ran out of diapers, and this nun came in there, and she told me, says, well, I can send over to the drugstore and get some disposable diapers, and they were like a brown paper bag. They were so coarse, and finally Doris started coming and getting the diapers and washing them.
I didn't think about you raising 12 kids without Pampers or gloves.
Not one of mine ever had. That's the only one that ever wore paper diapers.
You probably did laundry nonstop and then
No,
hung them
I
out to
did.
The
dry.
kids did laundry. Mother never did laundry.
No, Mother never did laundry. Y'all brought them off the line. I had 8 dozen diapers when Mary and
Gosh.
Sandra were in diapers together.
Good grief.
But no, I said I had never been around any. Well, there was one woman called that was Catholic, and the nuns would come there, to visit her, and they would be just jolly, and dance, and we'd have a good time. And I went there at that hospital, and those nuns were all there, and I was just about half scared to death. And this old nun came to me, and she was praying with me and everything, and she asked me, said, would you like to have something to do? And of course I said yes, and she said, would you rip this out and turn it for me? It was her habit thing, I felt
That would be weird.
I felt so weird trying to do that. So, but I ripped it out and turned it and hemmed it for her, which I wasn't the best sewer in the world, but anyway, she was very, very sweet, but they wrote that up in the medical journals.
Well, I've never noticed any kind of a scar or anything on Linda.
It goes from here to here.
I guess I've just never noticed.
You just had no. It's there. I mean, it's very faint.
Now it is. They had us to rub it every day, 2 or 3 times a day with cod liver oil to help. For one thing, they were doing it to help the scar to go away, and the other was to lubricate it to
Yeah,
work.
it'd be all itchy and everything as it dried.
And
Well, out of did you have all your kids natural, or did you ever have epidurals or spinals or anything like that?
no, any spinals or something. I had, I guess it was gas, or I had the first 3 at home, and I didn't have anything with any one of the first 3. And then I did have ether or whatever they had back when.
That just kind of put you to sleep?
Yeah, kind of put you to sleep. Well, with Sandra, I didn't get to the hospital until she was born within 30 minutes after I got to the
You
hospital.
barely made it.
So was Rick. And, but, no, I said it was, Sandra, I said, wasn't very many of us had cars out there, and they guys carpooled, but there was one woman, her brother had come down from somewhere, and he had a coupe. And that morning, she wasn't due right then. That morning, that I went into labor, and I called this woman, and I had one of the kids go tell her. Nobody in the neighborhood had a car, and so he said, well, he'd take me. So she and I, the 3 of us, got in the car and went to to the hospital, and I was, by the time he went and parked the car and got back up there, I was already
ready
having
to
the
go.
baby. He told her he didn't have any kids or hadn't been married. He told her, he said, if I'd known she was that close, I'd have died.
Been scared to death. Oh my gosh.
Anyway, that was an experience there too, and it was December 17th, and it was cold, cold, cold.
So you never had to have like any C-sections or anything like that? That's good.
Never had any problems with them and with that kind of thing. And the thing, I did better when I would let myself just feel it, and take time and not get nervous or anything. Now, when you put you in labor, that hurts worse than the just doing it naturally. And with Jerry, I went in and had him at 9 o'clock that night and walked out at 9 o'clock the next morning, and that was unheard of back in those
Honestly, I thought you used to have to stay in bed a whole month almost.
You did, yeah. You did not put your feet on the ground until that baby was a month old.
That was strange.
Oh, Lordy.
I just can't imagine, because then the husbands have to be up cooking and washing and stuff.
Yeah.
I just don't see that.
Well, there was some women there called that.
I guess
That's
you
all
had
they
family
did.
around. Yeah.
Well, I had family, but there were women there that would come in and take care, until you could get up. Well, 10 days you could put your feet on hang your feet off the bed.
What, do you have to use a bedpan, or could you go to the restroom?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yes,
Just being
You're finding
miserable.
out it was a rough thing.
I'm glad I live in this time.
It was rough, and it was.
Now the next day they send you home.
Yeah, and you're much better off. Of course, I said you lay there and you just.
Well, it gets you weak and
Well, the thing is,
maybe
and
depressing.
this is probably going to be shouldn't be said on this thing, but it was, you lay there, and if everything wasn't cleaned out, you just lay there, and
Yeah.
that's when you have so much
You
trouble
get
with
infection and everything.
infection and everything. So that's
Yeah, that's just like with Papa's heart attacks. Back then they said, well, don't exercise, he needs to rest. And nowadays you have a heart attack, they want you on the treadmill the next day practically.
yeah. They made invalids out of the men
Mm-hmm.
and women back in those days, because they
Just
They
didn't know
didn't.
any different.
they just did not think that they should do anything. And now, you're up. They had
Mhm.
Mary up walking in, 2 days?
I
Yeah.
know, yeah. After major heart surgery.
And so
When did Papa have his first heart attack? I think it was before I was born.
he was headed in February 1963.
That was the year I graduated from high school.
Was it?
Mm-hmm.
And Dean was born, let's see, Daddy had his in February. Dean was born, was it the first one or the second one? Dean was born on the 16th of January. And when he was 6 weeks old, Linda had to have gallbladder surgery.
Oh, no.
So I had her in one room and Daddy in another.
And you were playing nurse.
Yeah, and then in the next year in January, they were pulling his teeth, and he had one set of teeth pulled, and they went to pull the second bunch because they claimed that he had gum disease and was causing him to have problems. And that caused him to have
Have another heart attack?
another heart attack, yeah. They didn't know anything about, they were doing arteriograms and things, but they really didn't know anything really about putting stents or blockages or.
No, when me and Mama went to the museum there when she had her surgery, some of the equipment and stuff they used back then, gosh. I mean, they did stents back then, but that would have been scary.
They just did,
I mean, the equipment compared to today's equipment was majorly different.
well, the first sulfur drug was when I was carrying Linda, and I firmly believe that I took so much sulfur drug that while I was pregnant that could have had something to do with it, because I kept having I've had bladder infections all my life, and I kept having bladder infections, and the old doctor there, he just sent me out some sulfur drug, and I stayed on it so much that I kind of feel like that was probably what caused the
I'm sure you were taking stuff that nowadays a pregnant woman would never be allowed to take,
there wasn't very many medications. Now, it might have been in cities and towns, but not out where we live.
That's what I was going to ask you too, like when your kids were little, I mean now if they run 100-degree temperature you rush them to the doctor's office, but you didn't really have that convenience then, huh?
Oh, yeah, you called the doctor and he would come down, or if you could.
Did it actually come to your house?
Oh, yeah. He always came to the house, or you could go down to the doctor's office, and he had. I said I think he had ichthyol save, the old black save that we used to have a long time ago.
All that stuff's done.
It's had tar in it, and then he had.
What would you use that for?
That was any kind of cut, burn, boil, anything you had, you use that. And then they had something for, they, like, I think it was some kind of
Calamine or something like that?
calomel or something that you took in the summer or before summer came to clean your blood, and then they had that 3/6 and 3 whatever for that kind of malarial medicine and things like that. But and he dispensed aspirins and and anything like that, and all that was for $1 a month. And he
What's that stuff? I know I took it to start labor with Stephanie. What's that stuff called? That it starts with a C and then like gives you, it's a laxative.
oh yeah,
Castor oil.
Castor oil. Did y'all take castor oil? I mean, it always shows like in the older movies that it's a spoonful of castor oil every morning or something would keep you clean or whatever. That's
Well-
just so gross.
well they used to, yeah. My daddy believed in castor oil for everything, and he liked to kill me with it. And so he that's
yeah, I did it once. I'll never taste it again.
I took some castor oil with Ronnie. What I did with Steve, and I kind of went into labor, and then it stopped, and then I didn't, you
Didn't
know,
take
have
more.
it for several more days. Maybe it would have stopped anyway. But then I went to the hospital with Ron on, I guess the day before New Year's Eve, and I got in there and my labor stopped, and I was just laying there, and this Dr. Payton was the big gynecologist then. I don't know whether there's any more in Fort Arthur, and he'd walk in and look at me, "You still here?" I said, "Yeah, I'm still here." "I can't believe this doctor, your doctor, it hadn't done something to help you have this baby." And he'd come back another time, and then New Year's Eve, I still hadn't had him. The next morning I got up and I packed my suitcase, and I went down the lobby and waited for Harold to get there. It was a Sunday morning, I think. He rode the bus down there. So he called a taxi and we went home. He said, "No, we're not going home." I said, "Yeah, we're going home."
Was he born like the next day?
I come home and we came over to Barclay and Darcy's here in Needland, and I took a dose of castor oil, and then he was born on like 1 o'clock in the morning on the 4th. So that was the only one I ever went home. You know, I went to the hospital and went home
Yeah.
with.
Yeah, that's a bad labor too, with the castor oil labor.
Yeah, that's it.
That was my worst. No way.
Well, that. Well, things were a lot different back in those days. And, you know, you had to. Daddy had well, we washed on the rub board, and they had a woman that came and at my dad's and washed once a week, and then we'd wash about Thursday or Friday, you know, to wash up wearing clothes. You just didn't have that many clothes. But the big, like the sheets and things, this black woman would come wash them. And then Daddy bought this gasoline washing machine that had the roller.
I didn't know they had gasoline
They had
stoves and gasoline washing machines.
and Daddy put it in the barn, and that barn, the floor wasn't real steady, you know, and that thing would dance all over the place. And when I was pregnant with Linda, I was having a lot of trouble anyway, and Harold would go down there, Daddy'd go down there after work, and they'd have to heat the water in the wash pot and move it over into the tub. So usually Grandma Fowler, she was good at lighting a fire. she'd get a fire going around the wash pot, and then when he got off from work, he'd come down there and wash the clothes, and because everything that thing was jingle, I just couldn't do it. Then he'd go out there and he'd hang them by the corners, one diaper, and he might hang two together, and Grandma Fowler let him get going. It was, in the summertime, days were long. She'd let him get going, and she'd go out there and shake them out, and hang them out straight so they wouldn't be too crooked.
I always wondered how come you never learned to drive. I know you tried a few times. But how come you just never wanted to, or were you just too busy raising kids?
Part of that was I was too busy raising kids. Now, I drove there and call, and I'd go out to Call Junction to my aunts and places like that, but I just never did, just really get comfortable with driving. I think I had 2 left feet and 2 left hands. But anyway, we moved to Houston then, and of course I didn't try to drive.
Yeah, it's a big city.
In Houston, and then when we moved back down here, I was coming through, I'd gone down to Gilry's store, and I drove down there, and I was coming back through Woodcrest, and there's a kid running out right in front of me. I didn't hit it, but I just got so nervous.
Scared you to death, yeah.
Yeah, and I was pregnant, and so I just didn't drive. And then after that, and I started having these younger ones. I just never did want to put the kids in the car with somebody that's just barely learning to drive.
And back then, there's no car seats.
No, and so I just, I just never felt comfortable about, and we never had but the one car, and I really didn't have.
Papa was using it to go back and forth to work.
Yeah, well, a long time we didn't even have a car, and he had to go down to the corner on Avenue A down there and catch a ride. He rode with a man for a long time that we didn't even have a car, but I just, after that day, I wouldn't try to drive through Woodcrest anymore. And I don't know why, that it was just a fear that I had about.
Well, that would be scary. You almost had
And
somebody.
as long as I was there around Call, there wasn't much traffic, so it wasn't any problem. I could drive the car out to Call Junction or anywhere.
And today it just seems weird because now it's like everybody has a car. And so even whenever you had a house full of teenagers, either you didn't have a car or you only had one. And so it wasn't like everyone was, hey, Mom, can I borrow the car keys tonight?
Yeah, well, Papa's car was strictly for work. He didn't like the kids to use his car. He would occasionally. But then when Linda was getting ready to graduate, we moved here in March, and she was going to graduate from Fort Natchez in May. And she had a ride with there was one boy from here that was going to Fort Natchez for some reason or the other. But that didn't work out, so Daddy went and bought a $100 Dodge, and she drove that back and forth. And that was the first time we had 2 cars. And then it was here for a long time, and then I think we bought another one, and when Sandra was going to college. And then she decided that she's working, she's going to buy what was that big old car she had?
I don't remember. I remember the car, but I don't remember what it was.
It was a big old thing that had big fin lights on it. Huge car. And, but, they were supposed to share it, with the cars, which they did. Some, but more than likely it was Sandra or Linda that was doing the driving. Mary didn't have much chance.
No, I didn't even get my license till I was about a month before I got married.
And then she got married right out of, pretty soon out of high school.
Yeah, right. 1 month after high school.
And so that was, and during the time, then the kids, the girls were driving, and I didn't feel like I needed to.
Yeah.
And then I was Beth was the best one to teach me, and I was using their car. They had a little small, I think it was a Dodge. But Mireille took it over when she came down.
I remember that, yeah.
And she had it. And I never did go get my license, but
But you did fine without one. I mean, you had plenty of people around to
Well,
run to the store, and
well, there's been times when it was really hard, especially when I was, uh, up and able to do things that I just need a piece of thread or I need
Mhm.
one
Just
little
something.
thing that I was cooking something. Of course, we had that little store down on the corner,
Yeah, I
and they could
remember
run down there and pick up things. So it just worked out that way. Now, they didn't all ever live here at one time, except for the.
yeah, you like had them in shifts. You had your older group and then your younger ones.
Well, Charles was in the service before Mike and Jerry were born, and then Byron was in the service before Jerry was born. So, the only time they all lived in this house together was when Byron had come out of the service and Charles hurt his back and couldn't work.
How many of the boys actually? I mean, I know Ronnie was in Vietnam. How many of the boys actually were in wartime? I mean, were they in Korea or?
No, the only one that was in wartime was Ron.
What was that like? Because I mean, like right now, Michael's draft age, and I would just be totally freaked out every day because you don't know what's happening. Was that scary or?
Well, it was really, really, really scary with, in World War II, Daddy your papa was eligible to go
Mhm.
anytime, and he was put in 1A, and he really wanted to go, but Daddy told him if he'd wait till they made provisions for the families, which
Yeah.
they would, then he could, go, and that I would have an allotment.
Yeah.
But then Uncle Alan came, got him, and he worked at that West Mile, the boiler works, and then he went to work at the Brown Shipyard, and then he went to work for Hughes too. So he worked in what they call war,
It was war-related work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Supporting the war. Yeah.
and he welded all those years, and
But how did you do when Uncle Ronnie was off at war?
it was very hard.
I
That's
just
when
can't imagine.
that's when I went to work.
Yeah, I just can't imagine that.
He was stationed in Japan, but he was in and out of Vietnam and in and out of course, he was in the Secret Service part of it. And what he was doing was decoding messages most of the time and running missions but just like he had an attack of appendicitis and while he was on a ship, and I didn't know anything about it until they'd flown him back to somewhere there in Japan, and he had had surgery and was doing better, and he finally let me know. They didn't let me know that he had surgery. I don't know what ship he was on or where he was. I know at one time he was off the coast of Russia for a while, and no, I said Charles was never overseas except for the 4 months he was over there with President Eisenhower. Eisenhower was there 13 days and he was there 4 months. He was in an aircraft unit, and they put the aircrafts off at every place he was going to, those 13 countries Eisenhower was going to. And so they were gone like 4 months. He spent a lot of time in Quantico, Virginia. And Byron went to Korea, but it was after the war was actually over. But they were still having skirmishes on that DMZ zone or whatever it was.
When Steve went after Vietnam, when he went to the Navy, was Vietnam over?
Steve went in the Navy, and he served 4 years on the off the Atlantic.
Yeah.
And out in
Like Okinawa and stuff like that, or?
he went to Italy and all of those places. He was on Sardinia for a while, but they'd go out like 6 months and come back in. And then the second tour duty, he went out of San Diego, and all the South Pacific places like Honolulu and Japan and all those places. But the thing was, I was telling somebody the other day that he had been all over the world,
Yeah.
but he had never seen much of anything in Texas. Now he's learning Texas. Now that they've been to San Antonio.
Yeah. He's actually getting out and about now.
Yeah, he's out and about. That's good. So, anyway,
You did good. Can you think of anything else you want to talk about?
not offhand.
And we'll do this again.
Okay,
We'll give everybody a chance to think of more stuff to ask you.
we'll just have to do that some other time. Sometimes my mind goes all right, and sometimes it don't. And I know I just rattled. You'll just have to.
But I like it when you rattle.
Yeah, I do too.
You'll have to just delete what you.
I don't think there's anything going to be deleted.
I don't think